Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is One Piece East Blue Saga Arlong Park Arc, Episode 35, The Hidden Past, Female Fighter Belmare. Episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So at the start of the episode, we have the officer fishmen of Arlong's crew investigating where Sanji's ship made landfall and crashed into the cliff. But of course, they've since moved to a different location, so none of the crew of Luffy's is actually there. However, as they're investigating, Luffy makes his way down the road and he sees them, muses to himself that these must be what fishmen are, and then just casually walks past them. Hachi then turns to him and basically asks him what he's doing and who he is. And Luffy at first says, like, what does it matter to you? Before introducing himself as Luffy and saying he's going for a walk. Hachi asks where he's walking to, and he says, heck if I know. And then Hachi just basically, like, waves him off with his little white handkerchief and then calls him a funny guy. We then see the group around Nojiko, who then is doing as she said she would last episode and starts to tell of Nami's past. And we see Nami so we start with Nami. She's in a bookstore. She decides to steal a book on navigation. Genzo catches her and basically brings her back to Belmare, who doesn't scold her in front of Genzo, though once he leaves, she does scold Nami for stealing. Nami makes a fuss because that means that they're poor. They then have a family meal together where Nami is. Well, Nojiko notices that Belmare hasn't been eating recently other than tangerines, and they realize this is because they are poor and she can't afford to eat, only feed the growing children. She then finishes sewing an outfit for Nami, but Nami's upset that it's hand-me-downs. She wants new clothes. She hates that they're poor. And when Nojiko says, like, this can't be helped because she's 2 years younger than her, she basically accuses Belmare of not even being her real family, which shocks and horrifies Belmare into hitting her. And Belmare says that even if they don't share blood, they are still a family. Nami runs away. Running away means going to the town where Genzo once again finds her, and Genzo then tells Nami about how she arrived in the village, how Belmare used to be a member of the Navy, and on one of her missions battling pirates, a village was mostly destroyed, and then she found Nojiko carrying a baby Nami that she didn't know beforehand but had saved. This gives Belmare, who is about to give up on life, a reason to live. She then sails back to her hometown, Kokoyashi Village, where she then brings Nojiko and Nami, who are suffering from a fever due to the storm on the seas, to the doctor, Nako, I think his name is. And they are all cured, and then when she wakes up after her illness, she claims that she is going to raise Nami and Nojiko. Genzo, of course, tries to talk her out of this because she's, not well off. She was a ruffian child, but she says she's an adult now. She used to be a Marine, and she's going to raise Nami and Nojiko because they are what gave her life. And then Nami, of course, feels a lot better about this. Nojiko then arrives to pick up Nami and bring her back home to Belmare, who is cooking them a feast. However, before they can leave the village, Arlong and his crew pull up, and Genzo sends the girls into the woods to hide from him. And that is when he of course, demands money for their lives, and they hope that Belmare will be missed because her house isn't in the village. However, because she's cooking that feast for Nami and Nojiko, smoke is rising from the chimney. Arlong and crew see it and start heading in that direction, realizing that it is a house. And Nami and Nojiko also run towards the house as well. And that is the cliffhanger that we end this episode on. So now that we remember what happened in the episode, we'll now rank the episode. As always, we're going to be ranking on a mostly objective ranking list, which is void emotion, but judgment and bias can still apply. And then the personal ranking list, which is the more emotional slash personal opinion, obviously. So the mostly objective rank values, we have our single arc supporting character introduction, which is of course Belmare, and that's worth 1 point. Then we have our single arc main character development, which is Arlong's takeover of the village, kind of like his backstory as a villain when he arrived and when he started to demand money from the village. That's worth 2 points, bringing us to 3. Then we have our multi-arc main character development, which is, of course, the fact that this episode is Nami's backstory, bringing us up to 7. But we did have some negatives. Now, none of these negatives were overly strong in the context of the show. And so I lumped them all together and only took 2 points total. But we obviously have Nami committing theft. Now, as an adult, she is a pirate slash a thief for the purpose of gaining the money to buy the village. Established character, however, in this case, she's a child, so at this point she had no reason or legitimate cause to steal and did so anyways, so I'm considering that a negative messaging or behavior. The fact that she intentionally chose her words to hurt Belmare when she was angry, and she knew what she was doing and how it would hurt her. To say that they weren't family and chose to do it anyways is obviously negative messaging or behavior. That's an emotional attack. And then we obviously have violence against a child, which is always very terrible. However, corporal punishment was the norm for children in a lot of cultures for thousands of years. It's only really in modern times that that is no longer the case. And this is a pretty old series, and it is in a different culture that created it. So while Western society in modern times has moved very far away from um, corporal punishment of children, that doesn't mean that every culture has. And you also have to take into consideration when it was made, which was quite a long time ago. And so taking those things into context, while I consider it extremely negative in messaging and behaviors, I also consider the context, the time period, and the difference in culture when considering that. And that is why it is lumped in. And then, of course, there's invasion of the village. But again, Arlong is a villain, so villains are expected to have bad behaviors. So again, I wouldn't take points for that alone, but I'm going to lump it in with the negative messaging and behavior. And that leaves us with a 5 out of 10 for this episode. And that brings our mostly objective ranking so far to as follows. But before I actually get to the list, small reminder that with the mostly objective ranking list, when more than one episode has the same score, the episodes will be ranked in episode order. So while there have been other episodes that are 5 out of 10, this one will rank below them solely because it aired later. That being said, our mostly objective ranking is as follows. First, the most wicked man of East Blue, Fishman Pirate Arlong. Usopp's death, Luffy, yet to land. The Witch of Kokoyashi Village, Arlong's female officer. Reunited, Usopp tells Nami's true story. And then in 5th place, we have The Hidden Past, female fighter Belmare. Now to my personal ranking, I'll admit I did score this pretty much the same as the objective ranking list. Like I said, there were quite a few negatives that built up throughout the episode. However, most of them were understandable in the context, if not forgivable. And because I don't think some of them were forgivable, but obviously, like within the context of the show, the time period, the cultural differences, etc., as I explained on the mostly objective ranking list, I do think there were a lot of negatives in this one. But also, we got an insight into the character. The start of the episode with Luffy's interaction with the fishmen, the first interaction that he had with the fishmen, was funny. I did chuckle. Not a full laugh, but a chuckle at that whole interaction, so that was fun. And again, just like the interest in the past story of Nami, but also like it wasn't my favorite episode by far. I think 5 was fair. I felt like it was overall average. There wasn't enough positive to really outweigh some of the negatives that were in there. And also, because it's part 1 of the backstory, it was very much like building up to the more dramatic aspects of the backstory in future episodes, leaving it a little bit more on the bland side, which fair enough, it has to be. You have to get this part of the story out so you can get to the more exciting things. Either way, I felt 5, an average, was fair, and that then makes our personal ranking list the most Wicked Man of East Blue, Fishman Pirate Arlong in 1st, then Usopp's death, Luffy yet to land, Reunited, Usopp tells Nami's true story, The Witch of Kokoyashi Village, Arlong's female officer, and then this episode also came in 5th for me personally, The Hidden Past, female fighter Belmare. That now brings us to the saga ranking so far. This is where we rank each of the arcs within the saga against each other. And so far in the mostly objective ranking, we have Romance Dawn arc at 1st with 86.67%, Orange Town arc in 2nd with 76%, Baretti arc in 3rd with 68.33%, Syrup Village arc currently in 4th, 64%, and so far Arlong Park arc has gotten 35 points out of a possible 150. On the personal ranking side, we have our Orangetown arc in 1st place with 74%, Romance Dawn arc in 2nd at 66.67%, Baretti arc in 3rd with 52.5%, Syrup Village arc is in 4th place at 49%, and so far our Arlong Park arc has gotten 34 out of 150. Bringing us to the final segment, which is the series ranking so far, and this is where eventually we'll be ranking each of the sagas against each other. But so far, the East Blue Saga has earned 25 points out of 80 on the mostly objective ranking, and on the personal ranking, it has earned 14 points out of a possible 80 so far. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked One Piece East Blue Saga Arlong Park Arc, Episode 35, The Hidden Past, Female Fighter Belmare. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.